TODCO overhead door is built to last a long time if it's properly maintained. The purpose of the repair and maintenance section of TODCO Tech is to help you get extra life out of your TODCO doors while ensuring their safe operation. Here are the areas we'll cover. Safety first, lubrication, track troubleshooting, cable replacement, cable drum, spring assembly, shaft or bearing assembly replacement, installing and rewinding counterbalance springs, correcting an improperly wound counterbalance, panel replacement for dry freight, weather-tight, and polar guard doors, top panel adjustment, seal replacement, hardware replacement, safety decals, ordering replacement parts. Help from TODCO. Safety always comes first with TODCO. This is important. An overhead door is a moving object. Never use a pull strap as an aid to getting in or out of a vehicle. For entry and exit, follow your manufacturer's recommended procedures. TODCO has designed 2 safety decals that are applied to all TODCO doors. The information contained on these decals is for the purpose of specifying maintenance and safety procedures that will add to the life and safe operation of the door. Observance of these precautions will benefit the users, owners, as well as the original equipment manufacturers. It is important that safety procedures be followed as described and illustrated in these decals. If a safety decal is worn or faded, it should be replaced. Also, it's important that you never paint over these decals. One of the most important elements of your preventive maintenance schedule is proper lubrication. In order that your TODCO door operates smoothly, the following parts must be lubricated on a regular basis: the counterbalance spring, the counterbalance shaft bearings, the rollers, hinges, top fixtures, bottom roller holders, and the lock. Operating a rusty spring puts undue pressure on the spring and makes the door harder to open and close. A few seconds with TODCO lube, and the spring is lubricated. In fact, lubrication of your TODCO door is fast and easy. Here's what you do. Spray the counterbalance shaft bearings. Make sure both bearings receive a liberal application of the lube. Lubricate the rollers. Be generous with the lube in the ball bearings as well as the shaft and the outer tires of the rollers. And allow the excess lubricant to flow into the tracks. Lubricate all center and end hinges as well as the hinge pin. When spraying the bottom roller holders, spray the lubricant through the holes provided. It is also recommended that the lock be lubricated. How often you lubricate depends on your own cleaning routine, but the few minutes spent lubricating will always be less than the time it will take to replace the part. 2 important things to note. First, TODCO does not recommend lubricating any of the seals. Second, the kind of lubricant that you use is extremely important. A moving truck pulls its own dust storm behind it. Using grease as the lubricant will attract and hold this dust. Grease can also harden at low temperatures. For this reason, TODCO makes and recommends TODCO Lube, or a quality light oil, for use as lubricant. A properly adjusted door should operate easily, and when stopped halfway or below, should remain stationary. If your door is fully lubricated but still binding, a quick examination and adjustment of the track and/or spacer washers can often alleviate this condition. Begin by checking the track installation. It is critical that the vertical track is square. To double-check the opening requirements, measure at several points between the vertical tracks. Then measure diagonally. If your measurements are equal, the door track is square. If not, you'll have to adjust the tracks in the opening accordingly to ensure correct alignment of the vertical door tracks. Next, check measurements at several points on the horizontal tracks to be sure they're equal to the measurement of the vertical tracks. If the horizontal track measurement is wider than the vertical measurement, the horizontal tracks should be shimmed accordingly. Next, measure the clearance between the roof bow or ceiling liner and the top of the horizontal track. The minimum dimension is 1.5 inches for the header-mounted top seal and 2.25 inches for the head seal mounted on the top panel. Check the weld points on the track. Once installed, the tracks should be welded at the couplers where the vertical tracks meet the horizontal tracks. Make sure that the tracks are properly aligned and welded in such a way so there is no obstruction inside the door track. Welds or any other obstruction in the track could cause the door to hang up and create problems in the operation of your TODCO door. Finally, properly installed, the vertical track head plate brackets should be welded to the header. If your tracks are square and free of obstructions, but the door still binds when opening and closing, check to see if the spacer washers on the roller stems are missing or positioned incorrectly. Spacer washers play an important part in maintaining proper alignment of your TODCO door by maintaining the correct distance at the four corners of the door. 1 to 4 washers should be placed on the left and right sides of the first section joint up from the bottom, and the first section joint down from the top of the door. TODCO offers specially designed split spacer washers that can easily be added to the roller stem without removal of the roller, end hinge, or door. When placed properly, these washers will help hold the door square with the track so it can open and close easily. Worn or frayed cables should be replaced immediately. Here are the tools you'll need for the job: safety glasses, winding bars, which are 2 steel bars 1/2 inch in diameter and 14 to 18 inches long, a 1/2 inch wrench, pliers, a pair of vice grips, masking tape, a work lamp, a stepladder, and 2 equal-size wood blocks, 2x4, to keep the door from pinching your lamp cord. We'll start with the replacement of a single cable. This is important. If you're replacing a damaged or broken cable, it may be advisable to replace both cables at the same time due to age or condition of the other cable. When replacing a single cable, you start by releasing the cable from the cable drum. Loosen the set screws and remove the cable from the drum. Then, release the cable at the cable anchor. Do this by removing the cotter pin and the cable anchor pin. Remove the cable and discard it. When ready, insert the thimble end of the replacement cable into the cable anchor. Then, replace the cable anchor pin and the cotter pin. Carry the new cable to the top of the door and thread it between the header and the top of the door panel and tape it in this position. Unlock and raise the door. Be very careful when you do this. Place the equal-size wooden blocks on the threshold. Go inside with your tools, stepladder, and work lamp, and lower the door onto your wooden blocks. This is important. The spring is under high tension and could cause severe injury. Repairs and adjustments must be made by trained service personnel. When ready, fully insert one of the steel rods into the most convenient hole in the counterbalance spring winding plug. Raise the bar enough to insert the second steel rod. Release the tension on the rods so that the second rod is resting against the top panel of your door. Insert the cable end of the new cable into the slot. Thread the cable onto the groove nearest the slot and turn the drum toward you. Continue turning the drum until all the slack is taken out, making sure the cable is following in its proper groove. If your cable is not properly wrapped around the drum, the cable will run out of space on the drum, and as the door is raised, it could cause the cable to jump off the drum. Maintain tension on the cable and slide the cable drum on the counterbalance shaft against the bearing. This is an important step to ensure proper alignment. With the drum against the bearing and tension applied to the new cable, tighten both set screws. With the first drum now secure, readjust the tension on the undamaged cable by following the same procedure. Make sure it is positioned against the counterbalance shaft bearing. Then retighten the set screws. Both cables should have equal tension. To change out the second cable, repeat this procedure. You complete the cable replacement by releasing the spring tension. Use caution. Rotating the counterbalance assembly and drums too far may cause cables to jump off the cable drums. Rotate the assembly far enough to allow the removal of the winding bar. If you need to replace a cable drum, spring assembly, shaft, or the bearing assembly, you'll need to remove the counterbalance assembly first. Begin by unlocking and raising the door. Place equal-size wood blocks on the threshold. Go inside with your tools and work lamp and lower the door onto your wooden blocks. This is important. The spring is under high tension and could cause severe injury. Repairs and adjustments must be made by trained service personnel. When ready, fully insert one of the steel rods into the most convenient hole in the counterbalance spring winding plug. Raise the bar enough to insert the second steel rod. Release the tension on the rods so that the second rod is resting against the top panel of your door. Loosen the set screws on both the left and right cable drums. Unwind the cable and tape the end to the inside of the top panel. Repeat with the second cable. Loosen the set screws. Now, rotate the steel rod in the counterbalance spring winding plug until all tension has been relieved. Loosen and then remove the 2 bolts from the spring anchor bracket. Then, loosen and remove the 2 bolts from the bearing assembly to be replaced. If you're replacing a cable drum or shaft bearing assembly, you only have to remove the bolts from one of the bearing assemblies like this. Slide the counterbalance shaft in the same direction as the bearing you just removed until it clears the bearing assembly on the opposite side. Then, take down the free counterbalance assembly. If the anchor bracket is too close, you'll need to remove the 2 bolts from it, allowing you to remove the drum or bearing assembly. Slide off the old cable drum and reinstall the new cable drum. If you need to replace a cable drum, please note that they are specifically designed and marked for use on the left or right side. You determine this from the inside facing the door. Your right is the door's right, which is also the driver's side. Your left is the door's left, or the passenger side. With the counterbalance down, the shaft bearing assembly can be easily removed and replaced. Also, with the counterbalance down, a broken or damaged spring assembly can be removed and a new one installed, like this. Install the counterbalance assembly by reversing this process. Refer to the cable replacement section of this program for the complete procedure to reinstall the cables. The next section will guide you on installing and rewinding a new spring. Door adjustment and spring tension are critical to proper door operation. Springs can fail with extended use. It is important that the overhead door not be operated with a broken spring. Here are the tools you'll need for installing or rewinding a new spring. Safety glasses, winding bars, which are 2 steel bars 1/2 inch in diameter and 14 to 18 inches long, a 1/2 inch wrench, pliers, a pair of vice grips, a work lamp, a stepladder, and 2 equal-size wood blocks 2x4 to keep the door from pinching your lamp cord. Unlock and raise the door. Place the equal-size wooden blocks on the threshold. Go inside with your tools and work lamp and lower the door onto your wooden blocks. This is important. Never wind your spring while the door is in the up position. This could cause the spring to kink or snake like this. A recommended method for correcting a kinked spring will be shown at the end of this section. If you're installing a new spring or rewinding a spring, you'll need to start from scratch. First, make sure both cable drums are loose on the counterbalance shaft. Wind one of the cables on its drum, maintaining cable tension. Press the drum against the counterbalance shaft bearing and tighten the set screws. Place the vice grips on the counterbalance shaft with the handles against the ceiling to maintain tension on the cable. Repeat the winding and tightening procedure on the other cables so that both cables are under equal tension and the cable drums are fitted against the bearings. Now, draw a chalk line the length of the new spring to be wound. This is required for counting the number of turns applied to the counterbalance spring. To establish the number of turns required, measure the opening height of the door in inches. The opening height is the distance from the threshold or sill to the bottom of the header. Divide the opening height in inches by the number 10. Add 3 to this number, and you have determined the approximate number of turns to put on the spring. To give you an example, if the opening height of a door is 80 inches, you would do the following simple calculation. Divide 80 by 10, and you get 8. Add 3 to 8, and you arrive at 11 turns to put on the spring. In this case, 11 is the number to be used as a starting point in determining the correct balance. A slight adjustment might have to be made to achieve the desired tension. Begin by placing the first bar in the counterbalance spring winding plug. Press it upward towards the ceiling. Wind the spring by alternating the bars until the proper number of turns is reached. To count the number of turns, simply watch the chalk line you've drawn on the counterbalance spring. You can count the number of turns on the spring by counting the wound portion of the chalk line. For example, 3 turns of the spring would look like this on the chalk line. 7 turns would look like this. And 11 turns, the number of turns we've calculated to be right for the 80-inch door, would look like this. When you've reached the correct number of turns, hold the winding bar firmly with one hand and tighten both set screws on the winding plug. Remove the vice grips on the counterbalance shaft, and the procedure is complete. Please note, the cable drums must be set snugly against the bearing like this. Now, check to determine if your door is in balance. Open the door a few feet. When stopped, the door is properly balanced if it remains at this location. If the door drifts back downward or starts to close, add tension by continuing to wind the spring. If the door drifts upward or continues to open on its own, the spring has too much tension. Decrease tension by reversing the winding procedure. Also note that all of the installation and winding guidelines hold true for a shallow header counterbalance assembly as well. Built to fit into the small space of a shallow header, the assembly operates to the reverse of the regular assembly. For example, the cable drum is still snug against the bearing, but the cable feeds off the opposite side of the drum. Also, there are 2 extra holes in the winding plug here for winding bars, and the spring winds in the opposite direction. Note, for the shallow header, the cable drum marked right is used on the opposite or passenger side, and the left cable drum is used for the driver's side. An important note: because of the tension exerted from the counterbalance spring, make certain the counterbalance anchor bracket is properly welded to the header. An improperly wound spring that appears twisted or bunched is commonly referred to as a snaked spring. This may cause the spring to fatigue prematurely, so it would need to be fixed immediately. Begin by closing the door and locking it. If you're not working with another mechanic, place a sign on the outside of the door advising of door repair in progress. Place vice grips on the counterbalance shaft next to the cable drum with the handles against the ceiling to maintain tension on the cable drums. Insert a winding bar into the counterbalance spring winding plug. Hold the bar firmly and loosen both set screws in the spring winding plug. The spring will move toward the spring anchor bracket to its proper relaxed position. Important: Do not remove the winding bar until the set screws are tightened first, like this. Remove the vice grips from the shaft. If you're replacing a panel, you'll need safety glasses, a hammer, 3 pair of vice grips, a ratchet with a 7/16 inch socket or a 7/16 inch wrench, a drift pin or punch, and an electric drill with a 1/4 inch bit. In addition, you'll need a work lamp, 2 small equal-size wooden blocks 2x4, and a stepladder. Unlock and raise the door. Place the equal-size wooden blocks on the threshold. Use the equal-size wooden blocks to allow the cord of the lamp to pass through. Lock the door in the down position by locking 2 vice grips directly over one of the rollers, on each side of the track, below the panel to be removed. Drill the rivets out of the hinges. Be sure you drill only the rivets in the damaged panel and not the adjoining panels. Use the drift pin or punch to knock out the loosened rivets. Secure the loose panel with vice grips. Lift the panels above the damaged one into the horizontal tracks against the track stop bolts. Secure them in that position by clamping vice grips to the horizontal tracks. Remove the old panel and insert the replacement panel. Line up the new panel with the others. Working at the bottom of the new panel only, drill a pilot hole using a hinge as a guide. Insert the drift pin or punch into the pilot hole to keep the panel from shifting. Finish drilling all the holes at the bottom of the panel, including the end hinges. Then insert the bolts for the hinges and tighten. Remove the vice grips from the horizontal tracks and bring the panels from the horizontal tracks back down. Line up the panels. Drill all the holes for the top of the replacement panel just as you did for the bottom. Use the drift pin or punch to keep the panel from shifting. Raise the top sections of the door back into the horizontal track and clamp them securely. Remove the vice grips from the replacement panel and drop it down. Insert the bolts for the top center hinges, driving them in with a hammer, forcing the splined shoulder of the bolt into the panel. Raise the panel and re-clamp it, and bring the top sections back down. Position the hinges over the remaining bolts and tighten the nuts. The procedure for replacing a Polar Guard panel is exactly the same as you just saw for a dry freight panel, with the exception of the center hinges. This is because the TODCO Polar Guard door is manufactured of fiberglass material in a hollow core design. Use a punch to knock out the center pin. Drill out the center hinge rivet using a 1/4 inch drill. Go through the inside layer of the panel only. Do not drill completely through. Bolts are used to refasten the end hinges just like the dry freight door. Use only a specially designed TODCO rivet to replace and pop in place. Do not use any other rivet as it is not constructed for this purpose. The process of panel replacement for the weather-tight door is the same as the dry freight door, except for replacing center hinge rivets. This is because the TODCO weather-tight door is manufactured of polycomposite material in a hollow core design. Use a punch to knock out the center pin. Drill out the center hinge rivet using a 1/4 inch drill. Go through the inside layer of the panel only. Do not drill completely through. Bolts are used to refasten the end hinges just like the dry freight door. Use only a specially designed TODCO rivet to replace and pop in place. Do not use any other rivet as it is not constructed for this purpose. The next checkpoint involves the adjustment of the top panel fixture. When properly installed, the top door panel should fit flush against the header at the top of the door opening. If the top panel is not in the same plane as the rest of the door sections, a gap like this is created. When you see this, the top fixture slides need adjustment. The top panel adjustment fixtures are located on the inside of the top panel on the left and right sides. When adjusting the top fixtures, simply loosen the bolt and slide the fixture either up or down, depending upon if you want to move the panel in or out. Then retighten the bolt. Be sure to do this on both sides. When properly adjusted, the panel should fit tight against the header like this to keep out the elements and better protect your cargo. This section will cover the installation of TODCO side seals, head seal, and bottom seal. When properly installed, the side seals for your TODCO door will keep your cargo dry. First, check to be sure that the rubber seal is properly inserted into the vertical track mounting angle. Make sure it is tucked in behind each lance. If either seal is wrinkled, it needs to be stretched. This will ensure that it doesn't get bunched up as the door operates. First, check to make sure the bottom drive rivet is secure. If not, replace it. Then, slightly stretch the seal so that there is no slack. Next, while keeping the seal taut, secure it with a drive rivet at the top. Once secured, cut off the excess. Next, examine the head seal. Grooves are cut into the ends of these for the door cables. If you see any other tears like these, replace the head seal. Use a ratchet to take out the top brackets on both sides. Then lower the top panel. Feed the damaged rubber out of the extruded head seal retainer located on the top panel. Thread the new seal into the extrusion and tap the end of the extrusion to crimp the seal in place. Trim off any excess seal rubber. Then reattach top brackets. Open the door and examine the bottom seal. If it is not completely intact or missing, replace it. Begin by carefully removing tension from the counterbalance spring. Refer to the counterbalance spring section of this video for specific details. Using a 1/4-inch drill, drill out the semi-tubular rivets on the steel bottom angle, and then the rivets holding in all of the hardware, such as the cable anchor brackets, both bottom fixtures, the lock, and the pull strap. Take off the bottom angle and remove the old seal. If you're installing a new bottom seal on a 2.5-inch puller guard door, you will first have to add a new aluminum bottom seal retainer by pop riveting it to the bottom of the TODCO puller guard door like this. For all other TODCO doors, put the new bottom seal on the bottom angle and carefully raise the angle up and into place like this. Then attach with semi-tubular rivets. Reattach all hardware with TODCO-approved fasteners. See the next section of this video, Hardware Replacement, for specific details. To complete the installation, you will now need to reattach the cables and wind the counterbalance spring. Please refer to both of these sections of this video for specific instruction. This section will cover aligning and replacing a lock, replacing fasteners for hardware like straps, lock keeper or cable anchor brackets, and checking and replacing rollers and spacer washers. First, inspect the lock. If you see the tip of the lock's lever arm sticking up like this, the lock is probably out of alignment. Check by wiggling the lock lever arm. If it moves like this, it definitely needs adjusting by welding extra metal to the bottom of the pin box. Loose locks allow the door to bounce up and down in transit, knocking years off your door's service life. The lock lever arm should close tight against the pin. It is weighted and balanced, which provides an automatic tightening feature. The lever arm design lets gravity do the job of keeping the door from bouncing down the highway. Examine the lock to see if it is bent or damaged. If it is, replace it. Lock placement is also an important part of maintaining proper door operation. Always check lock placement. The center rivet on the lock back plate should line up with the center line of the lock catch plate or pin. If the points don't line up, you may need to reposition the lock catch plate. The next step is to inspect all fasteners. Tighten or replace loose fasteners on the pull strap, the lift handle, the lock or lock keeper, and the cable anchor brackets. To replace a rivet that is loose on any of these hardware parts, start by drilling the rivet out. Use a drift pin or punch to knock out the loosened rivet. Insert a semi-tubular rivet or a TODCO step bolt for the new hardware part and tighten. For instructions on examining rollers and spacer washers, please refer to the Track Troubleshooting section of the TODCO Tech inspection portion of this video program. To replace a roller, start by using a 1/4-inch drill and drill out the 4 semi-tubular rivets from the end hinge. Remove the end hinge and roller. Discard the old roller. Put a new roller into the end hinge, and then put the roller and end hinge into place in the track like this. Refasten the end hinge assembly with bolts or semi-tubular rivets. It is important to replace any warning and safety instruction decals that are worn, painted over, or in any state of disrepair. The spring warning decal should be mounted in the center of the inside top panel. The warning and safety instruction decal should be mounted on the roadside exterior of the bottom panel, approximately 12 inches from the center line of the door. When ordering replacement parts or panels, please provide TODCO with the serial number of your door. This number is found on the decal attached to the inside right of the door near the top. With this number, TODCO can check the records of the original door to ensure you're getting compatible replacement parts. When measuring for a replacement panel, be sure not to include the tongue of the panel. Specify the length, width, and thickness of the panel. We also need to know the panel type: wood, single-wall extruded aluminum, double-wall extruded aluminum, aluminum clad, puller guard, or weather-tight. Finally, please specify whether top, intermediate, or bottom panel is required. For additional assistance when ordering replacement parts, you can access a printable parts list for all TODCO doors on our website. If you need to order a whole new door, TODCO provides a handy overhead door order form on our website at www.todco.com. In any event, always use genuine TODCO replacement parts to ensure the original quality, design integrity, and warranty of your TODCO door. We go to great lengths to make components worthy of the name they carry. If you need additional help or information, please visit our website. You'll find your TODCO representative knowledgeable and genuinely interested in making sure you get exactly what you need.